Welcome to the Fantasy Football Brothers podcast. My name is Blake. I'm joined here with my younger brother Carson. How you doing today?
I'm doing very well, and I'm excited for this. We did some upgrades with our recording, and I'm just hoping to make this an even better podcast for all of you listeners.
Yeah, so what we're here today to do is talk about the Thursday night game that just happened, and then any relevant fantasy news going into the weekend matchups. So I'll start with this. How are you feeling? Because you and I are actually going head-to-head this week.
Yes, we are. And I had Kyler Murray playing, and Blake had DeAndre Hopkins. So Kyler Murray's day allowed for Hopkins not to do too amazing. I guess that's one positive, but he's still...
Here's my takeaway from it. I pretty much matched your quarterback with a wide receiver.
Yeah, definitely. You sacrificed, if you can even say, I mean, obviously 8 points for Hopkins is not a good game for him, but that's much closer to his average than 9 points for Kyler is.
Yeah, so, well, either way, Hopkins was in and out of that game. He missed a whole half of the game, technically.
I did hear that.
Yeah, he left with like 8 minutes left in the first quarter, and then came back with 8 minutes left in the third quarter. So, and then even still, he was in and out towards the end of that game. It was really irritating to watch.
Yeah, I bet. And I did say I didn't watch any of it, and it just popped up on my screen too. I did happen to see the final interception on when Kyler was throwing in the end zone to AJ Green. Were you watching that?
Oh yeah, I watched the whole game.
What happened there? You want any explanation?
Yeah, what happened was I put in a call to Hopkins because he's one of my players, and they said, "Hey, on this last play, make sure Green's not looking towards the football."
So
and then the Packers cornerback did the rest, and that was a -2, another -2 for Kyler.
Yeah, I know. I looked at his score. Basically, he was like 10 with the fourth quarter starting, and then I look when the game's over, and he's at 9. I'm like, oh, great. Very productive fourth quarter. So
yeah, let's go ahead and get into
how the game
We'll get
went.
into the score. So we already alluded to how it ended, which was a crushing interception that prevented the Cardinals from taking it to overtime or winning the game.
Yeah.
The final score was 24-21. Both teams are now 7-1. Honestly, I mean, considering that they just played, we have an indication of how they compete with one another. Yeah. It was a very close game. The score indicates that, but also I think that between the two, I kind of feel better about the Packers, not just because they won, but because of how they have bounced back from week 1.
Yeah, oh yeah, for sure. That's really good. Do you feel like this could be the NFC Championship?
Certainly. I mean, these are the two best records in that conference, so I think that's definitely a possibility.
Yeah, I'm looking at the stats of Kyler and Rodgers, and as far as they had the same exact number of completions, Rodgers threw the ball 4 more times than Kyler did. Rodgers threw it for 90 less passing yards, but had 2 touchdowns and 0 interceptions, and Kyler had 0 touchdowns and 2 interceptions.
Yeah. So something that the box score, or rather the final score, doesn't indicate is that the Packers outpossessed the Cardinals.
Oh yes, I heard about
basically
this.
2-1.
Yeah.
I mean, they had 31 carries between their running backs. Green Bay did.
Yeah.
Compared to 12 from Edmonds and Connor combined.
Yeah.
So yeah, they outsnapped them in a significant fashion. They definitely controlled that game, and despite the fact that they were playing on the road.
Yeah, and I guess I didn't notice that Kyler also had a fumble, so he struggled this game with turnovers and finding the end zone. But I mean, he didn't have a horrible passing day. He just couldn't score with anyone besides was it James Conner and Chase Edmonds were the only scoring players for the Cardinals.
I was every time the Cardinals got in the red zone, and of course Hopkins wasn't on the field, so I was hoping that it was going to be a run play to one of those guys, and it ended up working out every time.
Yeah, 5 carries for Connor and 2 touchdowns. That's atrocious, but not much better. I mean, as far as just like, I don't like that for fantasy. It's just annoying that he keeps on getting that. But like, that's so weird. But then Edmonds only had 7 carries, but he found the end zone too. Like both of them, Connor even more so. But
And I
both of
believe
them.
that was Edmonds' first rushing touchdown of the season.
Oh wow, I can check you on that. Let's see.
Yeah, I think that's the case.
That
Either
is.
way,
That's true.
yeah. So, uh, and we talked about this a lot on the regular show, but uh, these Cardinal pass catchers, you just if you're gonna start them, you have to just live with the outcome week to week.
Yeah.
Because I mean, nobody had an exceptional game because Kyler didn't have any throwing touchdowns, but Green, Kirk, and Ertz all had very similar outings.
Yeah.
And then I still think Rondale Moore is that guy, that lowest guy on the totem pole for that offense.
Yeah, it seems like he is. I mean, out of all those people, none of them boomed, but I feel like Moore is the only one that actually like busted out of all of them because like Hopkins, Green, Kirk, and Ertz, like they all had at least 8 points. So you're like, that's fine. But Moore only had 5.4. Like that's not what you like to see.
Yeah,
He did have a rush for 1 yard. He had 2 carries. That's kind of weird.
yeah, they were trying to get him involved, and one was like it was a backwards pass, so it counted as a run. But the idea was it was like a screenplay designed for Rondale to be in motion and then get the pass.
Oh, and Rondell Moore also had a fumble, so that hurts his fantasy outlook too. Yeah, I mean, I guess I agree. I mean, wasn't there some point in this season where Moore had the most targets out of any receiver on the Cardinals?
Yeah, it was early in the season. I want to say by week 3 that was the
Yeah.
case, but it was still an interesting stat for novelty purposes.
Well, yeah, especially if Hopkins being on the team, for sure. I definitely think that's interesting. I guess I'll transition real quick to the other side with the Packers. How do you feel about A.J. Dillon getting one more carry than Aaron Jones?
It was interesting. So watching the game, it was pretty clear that their intention, considering, I mean, they were down Devontae Adams, they were down Alan Lazard, and they were technically down Marquez Valdez-Scantling,
Yeah.
still on IR. But so they had Randall Cobb, who didn't do a lot except for the catches that he got. He had a very CJ Uzama type outing.
Except less yards, fewer yards, but still.
Yeah, much fewer yards.
2 touchdowns.
It was all red zone targets really. And then Robert Tonyan, who tore his ACL in this game, so he's out for the season.
Yeah.
But yeah, their plan of attack was to incorporate Aaron Jones in the passing game, and I mean, we definitely saw that he had 7 catches for 51 yards.
Yeah.
So that makes up for the discrepancy in carries, but
Yeah.
it is indicative that AJ Dillon is here to stay in this offense. He's going to always be involved because he is that change of pace back. He's a bigger back. He's a bit of more of a bruising running back. So he's going to continue to get usage in this offense, especially when the good thing that I will say is that every time the Packers had a red zone carry, it went to Aaron Jones. He should have had two rushing touchdowns this game.
Yeah. And something else I think that is interesting is that, or I guess I'll just say that, like, I feel like it's more of a fluke that Dillon outcarried Jones in this game. I agree that he's there to stay. But, like, the fact that Aaron Jones had 11 targets, this really just, boils down to the fact that they had, like, all of their wide receivers out. So I don't think you're worried about the presence of A.J. Dillon in this offense, but, they spread Jones out, and it looks like Dillon didn't even have a target. So, like, they just knew that Jones was the more versatile of the two, so that's how they decided to deploy him. I guess I have one question, though, real quick. In a game that Aaron Jones was healthy, because we used to always say free Aaron Jones, like in prior seasons, but in a game that Aaron Jones was healthy, did Jamal Williams ever outcarry him?
I have no idea.
You probably don't know that off the top of your head, obviously.
You'd have to ask a Packers fan, because that's not...
I just don't feel like he has in a game that Jones is fully healthy, but I feel like it would take a very unique situation, like all of their wide receivers being out, for it to happen. So I think it's a little skewed, but you're definitely still worried about Dillon's presence in this offense.
Yeah, sure. I would agree with that.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's all I got with this matchup, personally.
Yeah, we can move on. Let's go ahead and get into news. So I'm gonna go ahead and start with, let's see, most recently. Oh, Kyler Murray was a little banged up. He left that game like after the game was over. He left the stadium in a walking boot. Um, but he should be fine. He's got, you know, few extra days between now and Sunday to be ready for that next game.
Yeah.
So there's really no considerable concerns about his availability for next week yet.
That's good to hear as someone that has him.
Yeah. Let's see.
I know something off the top of my head that I can start with real quick. Just
Yeah.
the move of Mark Ingram to the Saints.
Oh, sure. Let's talk about that a little bit.
That happened like Monday, right? It was very, very quick after week 7, but I think that, I mean, you can add to this, but my opinion is that only hurts Ingram's value, not like he had a ton just because he's going to be behind Kamara, but it might give David Johnson, or, I don't think both, or Philip Lindsay the chance to have some sort of fantasy relevancy when before they really had none. They were just like if you absolutely needed them because of buys. Do you agree with that?
Sort of.
I mean, it's still the Texans' offense at the end of the day.
Yeah, I was kind of more interested about it from an NFL perspective, just because I think it's likely that, considering Ingram started his career and played the majority of his career with the Saints, that he wants to retire with them. He's also pretty close to breaking the all-time rushing record with that franchise.
Oh, wow.
So that may also be a reason why he's returning, or that they made this decision to bring him back, so that he could get that record and retire with them. But I think that his days as a running back in the league are numbered.
Yeah, I agree, and I think this is interesting timing just because last week I was like kind of excited reviewing week 7. I'm like, oh wow, Jameis Winston's the only player besides Kamara that had more than one carry. Now, I don't think like Ingram's gonna like take a lot of carries away from him, but I'm sure he'll get more than one carry every game.
Yeah, so I do kind of think that it has the potential to limit Kamara's usage in the red zone.
Yes.
Like, especially goal line situations, because last week in particular, when Kamara had so many carries, you have to also keep in mind that Taysom Hill, Sean Payton's son, was not playing. He was injured. He was out. So traditionally, like we had a few weeks ago where Taysom Hill had a Marshawn Lynch-esque run that resulted in a touchdown, just shrugging off tacklers like 4 or 5 people. So that player, he has a potential to limit Kamara's usage in the red zone, and I think the addition of Ingram has the same opportunity. You remember a few years ago, and obviously Ingram has aged pretty significantly in that time frame, but Kamara and Ingram were both like top 15 fantasy running backs when that was a thing. You remember that?
I do. Was that just Kamara's rookie season, or was that his second season too? Because I know that Ingram left for wherever he left in the first place. I don't even remember. He went from the Saints originally, and then Latavius Murray kind of filled in that role. But was that Kamara's rookie season where they both had that value? Like the latter half of the season?
I believe so, yeah, because Kamara didn't really come on until the later half. But
yes.
Yeah, either way, I think it has the opportunity to kind of hurt Kamara from that perspective.
Yeah, I mean, from Kamara's perspective, hopefully Mark Ingram isn't like James Conner in the Cardinals offense. But I think what allows Kamara to still be fine, even though it would, it will not make fantasy owners of Kamara happy to see Ingram getting, easy goal line rushes. But Kamara's got such a high floor just from his receiving work that I really think that, if anything, it just gives him more opportunity to keep his legs fresh and get more receptions.
Yeah. Are you ready to move on to some more news?
Yeah.
Okay. Pete Carroll says he has no update on Chris Carson, who is eligible to return off IR next week.
Great.
He says Carson need to make a turn in recovery from neck issue, says Carson still feels uncomfortable. So that doesn't make you feel good.
No, not at all. I mean, I remember going into week 6, maybe it probably was, when he first had the injury designation and they had the Thursday night game, and Pete Carroll was like, oh, he might play. And then I've heard, like, with the injury he has, like, Pete Carroll knew very well that he had no chance of playing. So just because of what he has, the issue with his neck. So I don't know why they can't be clear and how he has no update.
Yeah, Pete Carroll has a reputation for being extremely optimistic with player injuries.
Yeah. I don't know
how he is.
You're questionable for a short week turnaround on Thursday Night Football to being placed on IR within a few days. Like, that's just ridiculous.
Yeah, I think it's just kind of, that's just how he is. But same team, similar news. Carroll says Russell Wilson has gotten his stitches out of his hand, but no ETA on his return yet. So that breaks my heart as a Lockett manager.
Yeah, that's tough. And again, who knows? Because it's just Pete Carroll. It could really be. It could be good. It could be bad. He's just doing the no news, and that's really annoying. I mean, it's like what happened to. I mean, obviously, this wasn't Pete Carroll, but it just reminds me of like what happened with Mixon at the end of last season, where they just would say nothing, but then not put him on IR at least. But last year, IR was not. It was longer than 3 weeks required. Correct.
What was the question?
This IR like. The IR amount of time when you're being put on injury reserve.
3 weeks.
Was it like that last season?
I believe they changed that rule last season.
Okay. So, I mean, putting a player on IR is much easier this season than it would have been last season. It's less of a commitment. So, it just reminded me, and it's really annoying for them because they obviously know what's going on to some degree. There's no way that he's like, I got no idea when he's coming back. Like, no, he's literally a professional head coach for an NFL football team. So I get that you can't be 100% transparent, but it's annoying.
Yeah. Let's see. Austin Ekeler questionable to play Sunday's game against the Patriots with a hip injury.
China doll.
And this is confusing because I don't know if he had some kind of extracurricular activity, but they're coming off of a bye.
I know.
So how is this just now popping up and becoming like a topic of conversation? It's concerning for Ekeler managers.
Like, it must have happened in practice, right? Extracurricular activity. I mean, yeah, because nothing was said after the Week 6 game. So yeah, that is very strange.
Yeah. Not much else to say on that at this point in the day, but along similar lines, although Dak Prescott was kind of banged up going into the bye, there's a lot of sources out there indicating that it's more likely than not that he's going to miss Sunday night's game.
Wow. Yeah, I didn't hear anything, and that's also weird because he was on bye last week too. But was he dealing with that like in week 6 at all, or is this kind of also?
It really happened on like the last play of the game.
Oh, yeah, that's unfortunate, but it is weird. Whenever teams have buys, and we're starting to see more because they're happening, obviously, plays like that where they just get injured near the end of the game and then you just forget about them because it seems like they don't report heavily on them if they're on bye, and then it's just like, okay, he's back to play for me. If you the week 7 buys were awful, you go pick up your quarterback, you're like, yeah, I get Dak back, just for them to say that again, yeah, that'd be disappointing.
Yeah, so honestly, if and I have in a different league, but if you have Dak Prescott, I would highly recommend picking up someone just in case. And it's difficult because although Kirk Cousins is probably your best option, if not Daniel Jones, because those are the later slated games. Mm-hmm. Kirk Cousins is available in about 40% of leagues, and I believe Daniel Jones is available in over half, like 55% maybe.
Yeah.
So those are two replacements that you don't feel terrible about, and they give you the flexibility of waiting until that's a game time decision for Dak if it comes to that.
Yeah, I mean, those really are your only two options if it's a game time decision because, I mean, Mahomes
Yeah,
isn't on the waivers.
check if Mahomes is on the waivers. Hey, there might be a league where somebody's fed up with him.
Yeah, somebody panicked. Oh, man, that'd be so funny. Yeah, that also
Yeah.
makes it annoying that he's not like a Sunday at noon game. But yeah, those are two really good, probably waiver options that hopefully everyone would have at least one of, but you never know.
Yeah, keep an eye on that. Baker Mayfield and Nick Chubb are both off of the injury report, confirming they're set to return to action on Sunday, so that's good for the Browns offense.
I guess I do have a question. Since it's confirmed that Baker will need a surgery after the season ends, so is it just because like his shoulder got aggravated? It's not like the problem's over, right?
No, it's on his it's not on his throwing arm.
Yeah.
So it's something that he can manage through the season, at least at this point. That's the approach they're taking. I think I think because he can manage it at this point, the option of waiting to do the surgery is best because once you have that surgery, then you need to rehab it and
Yeah.
obviously avoid taking physical contact to make worsen things. So
Yeah.
at this point, he is going to play through it, and that's kind of all that we have on that.
Yeah.
All right, tell me if you think this is important news. DeSean Jackson and the Rams have amicably agreed to seek a trade for him. So he really has not done a lot this season. He had one game where he popped off, but outside of that, and I don't know how old he is off the top of my head. I think I want to say he's 34.
Jeez.
But
so obviously, like my time playing fantasy, yeah, he's 34. I have not played fantasy when like DeSean Jackson was in his prime, but it seems like every single season he's good for a few huge games and then just extremely mediocre the other time. And I mean that's what you expect for an older wide receiver that's not at the top of the team, not at the top of the team's receiver depth chart. But yeah, I mean it depends on where he ends up. I don't know.
You think so? Because if he can't do it on the Rams, where's he going to do it? The Bucs?
I know. I'm just saying, if he goes to a team with less depth would probably be better for him.
Yeah, so the Texans maybe.
The Texans. I mean, honestly, or like, I don't know, the Eagles. I don't know. I guess isn't even.
Yeah.
That's where he spent most of his career, right?
Former, yeah, that was the majority of his career was with them.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like he gets traded to one of these teams and you're like, oh, you got to pick him up now. But
yeah,
he could have more value. Potentially, but yeah, I feel like that's worth monitoring to some degree, especially if you're in a deep league and your last receiver you never play anyways. Maybe pick him up just to see if anything happens.
Yeah, maybe so. I'm sure his roster percentage is pretty low. At this point.
I would assume too. I'll check real quick though.
Okay, here's another one. While you're doing that, Eric Ebron is out for the Steelers, as you may remember. Since he's kind of fallen off the planet, the face of the earth. He's a tight end. So it's looking more promising for Pat Freiermuth, who I talked about last episode.
Yes.
Maybe a bye week fill-in for your tight end.
Yeah, I think he could be a decent fill-in for if you if you have Andrews or Waller that are on bye. He could be a decent fill-in. I think he had 7 targets week 6 if I remember properly. So, I feel like he could have a decent floor. And, Ebron really has fallen off because I remember last season he had some value. So that is strange, but now he doesn't have anyone, siphoning targets away from Freiermuth, so that is good.
Yeah, I know. The door creaked open just a little bit more with that news, so we'll keep an eye on that for our recap next week.
Yeah.
Julio Jones out for Sunday.
See, is that even good for A.J. Brown? I don't think so. We talked about this last episode, I think.
Yeah.
I don't really know if that's good for A.J. Brown. Because it just forces a mediocre Tannehill to, I think Tannehill right now needs as many options as he can get. So I
Yeah,
think
it's
that
certainly
Brown
not a.
has
It's certainly
reemerged,
not
but
a. Yeah, I don't think it's a boost for Tannehill by any means. Um, and AJ Brown has been hot as of late. The last two games, he's been very good. He's kind of been returning to form. Well, yeah, it. I'd be a little concerned, I guess, about AJ Brown, considering that, like we talked about, I think the defenses will focus more on him when he's out there by himself. We could definitely look at the stats and compare how he performed. I mean, the last 2 weeks is when he's done well. So every week prior, when Julio Jones was in or out, he was bad. But I would imagine that whenever Julio Jones was out, that AJ Brown maybe did a little bit worse. I don't know. It's hard to say whenever his ceiling was so low prior to the last 2 weeks. Anyway.
yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, as we have recommended, you're not starting Julio till he proves himself, so he's out anyways. And then, I mean, Brown
Yeah.
is a must start, and he's reemerging. So you just got to hope that this doesn't hurt him too much, and I think he'll be fine. I will say, I looked up the DeSean Jackson. He's rostered in 2.2% of leagues.
That must be like a 30-plus-year-old league or something. Like you can only have players that are over 30.
Yeah, and that game that he had 21 points this season was 5 targets, his season high, 3 receptions, his season high. I mean, everything's season high. So
Yeah.
3 receptions for 120 yards and a touchdown.
Yeah, like I said, it was a blow up game, but it's certainly not. I think it's more noise than news, personally.
Agreed. I do agree.
All right, Antonio Brown is the only Buccaneer ruled out at this point for the game against the Saints. What do you think about that?
I think that is very good for Godwin and Evans, just because of what happened last week.
Do you know about the beef, the history that Marshawn Lattimore and wait, now I'm drawing a blank. It's Marshawn Lattimore.
Yeah,
I'm certain. Yeah,
I'm
okay.
sure that I think
for some reason I'm thinking of Marcus, but okay. Anyway, Marshawn Lattimore and Mike Evans.
Oh,
Do you remember? Do you remember? I think it was either last season or 2 seasons ago. They literally fought and got ejected from the game.
Oh, okay. I think I do remember that. I mean,
Yeah.
they're it's a divisional matchup, so they face each other a lot. But...
Yes, historically, Lattimore owns Evans. Like I think it was last season, he shut him out one game. He's held him to like 1 or 2 catches on a handful of times, like 2-3 times. So honestly, all signs are pointing for this to be a really big Godwin game.
Yeah.
As well as if Gronkowski is able to suit up and play, I think it's going to be a big game for Gronk, and we'll talk about that a little bit more. We're also going to be posting a DFS, a daily fantasy DraftKings video, so that is a sneak peek for one of my rosters.
Yes, that's interesting. I will say, were those times he was shut out like prior seasons to Brady, or has it happened with Brady even at quarterback?
Yeah, it definitely has happened with Brady.
Okay. So, yeah, I mean, that does... I do feel much better about Godwin than I do with Evans, so I agree with that. And then the fact that Gronk is coming in, yeah, I do agree with that. And I really never feel that confident with Evans, but you have to start him. I just think you do.
I guess our last story is, and it's kind of more speculation than story, but I saw today that the Dolphins head coach announced that Tua was going to be the starter for the rest of the year, and I think that kind of like slams the door on the Deshaun Watson trade rumors.
Huh, that is interesting. Yeah, because why else would he say that? Because they weren't thinking about benching him to Brissett, right? Isn't that their backup? Yeah,
Yes.
That has to be directed at the Watson trade.
Yeah, so, I mean, anything can happen between now and Tuesday when the trade deadline occurs, but I think it's probably more likely than not that Watson just gets kept with the Texans and probably gets held out for the rest of the season.
Yeah, it's a little. I mean, I'm not gonna mention on if he should or shouldn't play because of what he's going through legally, but it's
For
purely
fantasy
through
purposes.
for a fantasy perspective. I picked up Will Fuller because I had the roster space, and he'll be good regardless when he comes back from IR. But I was really excited just in case Watson was going to go there, just because of their prior connection. So
Yeah.
it's a little disappointing.
Yeah. Personal matters aside, for fantasy, the Dolphins are worse, or sorry, the Texans are worse for not having Deshaun Watson out there.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. So I think that pretty much wraps it up. I'll do a quick refresh, and I'm not seeing anything new, so I think we can wrap it up here. Anything you want to say before we go?
No, I think that this should be uploaded the same time as the DFS one on YouTube or whoever we're uploading it. So, check the other one out. If you haven't done DFS before, this could be your time.
Yeah, plenty of free contests for people who are new to it to get their feet wet. It's a lot of fun. It takes the hassle of a commitment for a fantasy lineup out of the equation because every week is a new opportunity.
And if you're smart, you can win some money.
Or if you're lucky.
Yes, we'll end with that. Thank you all for listening, and we'll see you all in the next one.
Bye-bye.